My love, I gave you my silence and my soul. I didn't give you noise or promises. I gave you the quiet parts of me, the places where words fall short, where feelings learn to breathe alone. I gave you pauses heavy with meaning and trusted you to hear them. My silence was not absence. It was devotion without performance. I stayed when explanations felt cheap. I listened when defending felt easier. I chose restraint over reaction and hoped you'd recognize love there. I gave you my soul without spectacle, no contracts, no grand vows shouted into rooms, just a steady presence, a willingness to be seen, even when I didn't know how to ask. I carried my feelings gently, so they wouldn't bruise you. I swallowed questions, turned doubts into patience, turned longing into loyalty, believing depth didn't need volume. You never saw how loud my silence was, how every quiet moment chose you, how every unsent message held care, how every step back was protection, not distance, not indifference. I gave you my soul in fragments, in late night thoughts I never shared, in forgiveness you didn't know you received, in trust rebuilt again and again, in staying soft when past pain begged me to harden. My love didn't beg for attention. It waited, believing understanding would arrive, believing you'd notice that when I stopped arguing, I was still choosing you. But silence can be misunderstood. It can look like distance. It can look like lack, when really it's fullness held carefully. I assumed you'd feel it, the way I felt you. I didn't know silence could break, that giving my soul quietly could still leave it unseen, unacknowledged, unprotected, like a gift left unopened. I gave you space when I needed closeness. I gave you patience when I needed reassurance. I gave you trust when I needed clarity. I thought love meant endurance. I thought loyalty meant quiet suffering. I was wrong, because love should be heard, even when it's gentle, and souls deserve recognition, not just tolerance, not just assumption, but presence returned fully, still. I don't regret giving you my silence. It taught me what I value. It taught me how deeply I can love, how carefully I can hold someone, even when they don't know how to hold me back. And I don't regret giving you my soul, because it was real, because it was honest, because it showed me my capacity, not my weakness, but my depth. Now I am learning a new language, one where love speaks and rests, one where silence is shared, not carried alone, one where my soul is offered to someone who listens and stays. My love, I gave you my silence and my soul, and even in heartbreak, I know one thing for certain. What I gave was pure, and what is pure will always find its way home. I am still unlearning the habit of disappearing inside love, of thinking sacrifice equals devotion, of believing patience must hurt. To be real, I am learning that love does not require me to shrink or soften my needs into silence. Love does not ask me to translate my pain alone. There were moments I almost spoke, when my chest felt too full, when my heart pressed against my ribs, asking to be heard, and I told it to wait. I told myself understanding would come. Without asking, I see now how often I chose peace over honesty, how I protected your comfort at the cost of my clarity, how I called it maturity when it was fear of being misunderstood. I mistook endurance for strength. I thought staying quiet made me noble, made me safe, made me lovable. But love should never feel like erasure. There is grief in realizing you loved harder than you were met, that your devotion went unnoticed, that your gentleness became invisible because it was never demanded. I mourn the version of me who thought being easy to love meant asking for less, who believed being chosen required becoming smaller, quieter, more convenient. Yet, even now, I don't regret who I was, because that version loved sincerely, without strategy, without manipulation, without conditions, and that matters. I am learning to speak, not loudly, but honestly, to let my feelings take up space, to trust that the right heart will not be frightened by my voice. I am learning that silence should be a shared language, not a burden one person carries. That love grows stronger when truth is allowed air and vulnerability is welcomed. I am no longer giving my soul to someone who only holds parts. I am no longer mistaking tolerance for devotion or presence, for partnership. My heart is still tender, still capable of deep love, still willing to believe, but now it asks questions. Now it listens to itself. Now it requires care in return. If I love again, it will be with someone who notices when I grow quiet, who asks instead of assumes, who understands that silence can be sacred, but never lonely. And if you ever remember me, remember this: I loved you in ways I didn't yet know how to name. I stayed longer than comfort. I gave deeper than safety. And I left wiser than I arrived. My love, I gave you my silence and my soul. And now I am learning to give myself both back, with kindness, with courage, with voice. Now I stand with my own heart. Listen,